Hannah had always believed that love was something you grew, not something you chased. She carried that belief gently, the way she carried her unborn child, close to her heart and full of fragile hope. In the soft morning light of their mansion, she moved quietly, her steps slow but steady, one hand resting on her belly, the other brushing over the baby clothes she had laid out on their bed. She had imagined Adrian smiling when she showed him the tiny socks, the pastel onyxes, the soft blanket embroidered with their child's initials. But when he walked past the doorway, he didn't even glance inside. His eyes were fixed on his phone, jaw tight, voice sharp as he muttered something she couldn't quite catch. He didn't even notice her watching him. It was small things at first. The way he barely touched his breakfast. The new habit of checking the time during dinner. The once warm goodnight kiss replaced by the cold click of the bedroom door shutting between them. Every evening, he returned home later, smelling of unfamiliar perfume, the faint trace of glitter clinging to his suit, and Hannah told herself not to worry. She whispered excuses into the quiet house. He was stressed, he was tired, he was overwhelmed. But the truth hung in the air like a shadow she refused to face. She tried to hold on to happiness with both hands. She folded baby clothes, hummed to her belly, and made lists of names she hoped Adrian would like. Yet every joyful moment felt like she was tending to a candle flickering in a storm. She felt him drifting. He felt her fading. The mansion grew colder, not in temperature but in spirit, as if the walls themselves knew something was breaking long before she admitted it. And though she didn't say it out loud, Hannah already sensed the truth. Love alone wasn't enough to keep someone who didn't want to stay. Adrian's world existed in two sharply different halves, and only one of them thrilled him anymore. In the bright universe of flashing cameras and curated perfection, Celeste Dane reigned with the confidence of someone who knew she was desired by millions. She had the kind of beauty that made people stare, that made magazine covers sell out, that made men like Adrian forget the things that truly mattered. With her long dark curls, sharp smile, and glittering eyes, she was a living distraction, and Adrian fell into her orbit with the naive eagerness of someone craving validation. She met him at a charity gala where she floated across the room in a silver dress that clung to her like moonlight. Adrian remembered introducing himself while Hannah stood only a few feet away, pregnant and glowing, but invisible in his eyes. Celeste laughed at every joke he told, leaned closer than necessary, and whispered compliments that curled around his ego like velvet ropes pulling him closer. She told him he worked too hard. She told him he deserved better. And eventually, she told him the biggest lie of all, that Hannah was the one holding him back. Celeste planted her words slowly, like poison seeds in a garden he didn't bother tending. "Your wife is sweet," she would murmur while smoothing her fingers along his tie. "But she's not on your level. She doesn't understand your world. She can't help you rise." Adrian drank in every word, blind to her intentions. Nobody had ever called him extraordinary the way she did. Nobody had ever made him feel like he was the main character of a glamorous story. He mistook manipulation for affection, attention for devotion, beauty for love. And while he showered Celeste with gifts and promises, he pulled further away from the woman who actually cared for him. He convinced himself that he was finally choosing happiness, unaware that he was stepping into a trap woven from vanity, jealousy, and someone else's ambition. Hannah didn't expect the storm to break that night. She stood at the stove stirring soup, breathing in warm steam to calm her nerves. The baby kicked lightly, as if reminding her she wasn't alone, and she whispered, "We're okay." But the front door opened with a sharp crash, and Adrian strode into the dining room dripping rainwater, with anger rolling off him in waves. Before she could ask what was wrong, he slammed a stack of papers onto the table. The sound echoed through the house. "I want a divorce," he said flatly. The ladle slipped from Hannah's hand, splashing soup across the counter. She turned slowly, eyes wide, heart racing so fast she could barely breathe. "Adrian," her voice trembled. "Why?" "I want to start fresh," he said, as if he was discussing a new office layout, not dismantling their entire life. "It's been coming for a while." She felt her knees weaken. The baby kicked again, a painful reminder of what was at stake. "But, we're having a child. Our child. Can't we talk about?" "I'm done talking." His tone cut through her like icy wind. "Sign the papers." Rain hammered the windows behind him, a perfect soundtrack for her breaking heart. She stared at the name printed at the top, Hannah Catry Cole. Her hands shook so violently she had to grip the table to steady herself. She had known things were bad, but she never imagined the man she loved would choose someone else over their family. Her world, once warm and bright, shattered silently as Adrian walked away without looking back. She signed the papers the next morning. No tears. No questions. Even her breathing felt controlled, as if holding herself together required precise effort. She packed only what she needed, a few clothes, a framed ultrasound photo, and the soft blanket she had chosen for the baby. She left behind her jewelry, her wedding ring, and every piece of the life she once imagined would last forever. Adrian didn't ask where she was going. He didn't offer help. He simply watched her leave with a look of relief that hurt far more than anger ever could. He believed he had finally freed himself, stepping into a new world with the model he thought he loved. He never wondered who Hannah had been before him. He never questioned what she might return to. He assumed she would fade quietly into an ordinary life. But he was wrong in ways he hadn't even begun to understand. Hannah's true story began long before Adrian, long before marriage, long before heartbreak drove her back to the life she once walked away from. Her real world was one Adrian could never have handled. She was the only daughter of Heiress Catry, a man whose presence alone could silence rooms and shift markets. He built a tech empire from nothing, turning innovation into power and power into influence. His company shaped the digital world, security systems, global servers, AI infrastructure, and quiet deals with governments nobody ever talked about. He was a ghost in the corporate world, seen only by those important enough to matter. And Hannah was the princess of that silent kingdom. But she didn't want that life. She had grown up surrounded by boardrooms, private jets, and headlines that painted her as a trophy. Every man she met seemed to want her name, her influence, or her father's approval. Then she met Adrian, a charming young entrepreneur with big dreams. He treated her like an equal, not a stepping stone. Or at least she thought so. She fell in love with his simplicity, with the way he talked about building something from the ground up. So she hid her identity. She traded luxury for normalcy. She wanted to know if someone could love her without the weight of her father's empire. For a while, she believed she had found the one man who could. Until she discovered she had been wrong again. When Hannah walked into her father's estate after the divorce, the silence that greeted her wasn't the quiet of an empty home. It was the quiet before a storm. Heiress Catry stood in the grand foyer, silver hair sharp against his dark suit, eyes narrowing the moment he saw her swollen belly and tear-stained face. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. The pain in her eyes was answer enough. Heiress led her into his private office, a place where global decisions were made with a single phone call. Hannah explained everything, voice trembling but steady enough to finish the story. As she spoke, her father's expression changed from grief to fury, not loud or explosive, but controlled and deadly, like a fault line preparing to reshape the world. "No one hurts my daughter," he said quietly. "No one hurts my grandchild." He didn't shout. He didn't rage. But the next morning, the financial world felt the shift. His company pulled out of ventures connected to Adrian's firm. Competitors received silent support. Influencers began posting cryptic messages about a scandal brewing. Heiress moved pieces across the board with surgical precision, and though Adrian didn't know it yet, his downfall had already begun. Meanwhile, Adrian's fantasy life with Celeste began to collapse from the inside. At first, she had been intoxicating. She laughed at everything he said and ran her fingers across his jaw like he was a sculpture she was proud to display. But once Hannah was gone, Celeste changed. She demanded more attention, more gifts, more money. She argued with him over petty things, criticized his suits, mocked his stress, and compared him to richer men she knew. The illusion of glamour wore off quickly. She became jealous whenever his phone buzzed, convinced he was thinking about Hannah. Their dates turned into disasters. Their nights dissolved into arguments. And slowly, Adrian began realizing that Celeste wasn't his escape. She was his prison. Then the news broke. Hannah appeared at a gala beside Heiress Catry, stunning in an emerald dress that revealed her pregnancy in the most dignified, regal way. Cameras clicked wildly as people tried to understand who she was. By morning, headlines screamed the truth. The quiet woman Adrian discarded was actually the heiress to a tech empire worth billions. Social media erupted. Investors questioned Adrian's sanity. Even strangers mocked him for choosing a model over a queen. Adrian saw it all while eating lunch with Celeste. His fork slipped from his fingers, clattering onto the plate, as the headline glared back at him from his screen. Celeste leaned over, raised an eyebrow, and asked with a sharp little smile, "So, you divorced a billionaire heiress?" Shame hit him like a punch. Panic followed. That night, he stood outside Hannah's new gated estate, drenched in guilt and memories. He begged the guards to let him see her until the gates opened and she stepped out, surrounded by soft garden lights. Her face was calm, eyes unreadable, posture strong. He tried blaming stress, pressure, loneliness, anything that might shift responsibility away from him. But as he spoke, he realized Hannah wasn't moved. She wasn't angry. She wasn't hurting the way she had been before. She had outgrown him in every possible way. Then her pregnancy complications struck. One afternoon, sharp pain shot through her body, dropping her to her knees. Within minutes, Heiress and his security team rushed her to the hospital, clearing hallways and demanding the best doctors. When Adrian heard, he arrived breathless and terrified. He tried to run toward her room, but Heiress stepped into his path. "You lost the right to stand beside her," he said in a voice so soft it made Adrian tremble. "This family will protect her now." Adrian froze as the doors closed behind Heiress, leaving him outside, powerless and shaking. Hours later, Hannah gave birth to a healthy daughter. The room glowed softly with warm lights, medical monitors humming quietly as Heiress stood beside her, tears in his normally steel-like eyes. Her closest loved ones surrounded her with gentle support. She held her daughter against her chest and whispered a promise to always choose strength over sacrifice. The moment was pure, beautiful, and everything Adrian had thrown away. As Hannah healed and embraced motherhood, Adrian's world began to crumble. Investors pulled out when they learned about his scandal involving the heiress. Partnerships dissolved. Rumors spread. Articles labeled him reckless and untrustworthy. Celeste left him the moment the financial strain touched her lifestyle, tossing their relationship aside like last season's accessory. Alone and drowning in consequences, Adrian finally understood what he had destroyed. Meanwhile, Hannah stepped into power with the grace of someone who was born for it. She joined her father's company, surprising everyone with her intelligence and quiet brilliance. She contributed ideas that transformed divisions, made compassionate decisions in boardrooms full of sharks, and carried herself with dignity that silenced every critic. People no longer saw her as a discarded wife. They saw her as a rising force, an heiress reborn, a leader who commanded both respect and admiration. When Adrian approached her one final time, he was a shell of the man he once was. He fell to his knees, begging for forgiveness, tears streaking his face. Hannah looked at him with calm eyes, holding her daughter close. She thanked him, not sarcastically, but sincerely, for teaching her who she truly was and what she deserved. Then she turned away, walking toward a future lit by her own strength, not shaped by anyone else's weakness. And in the quiet peace that followed, she stood on the balcony of her father's empire, her daughter nestled in her arms as the sun rose over the city. She had reclaimed her power, her identity, and her voice. The life she once lost had led her to something far greater. Not perfection. Not revenge. But freedom. A new chapter opened before her, one built on courage, clarity, and the kind of love that never abandons. Her story had only just begun.